The thunder crashed across the sky above New Dakota Colony as Dr. Jake Morrison locked up his small veterinary clinic for the night. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, turning the dirt roads into muddy rivers. Jake pulled his coat tight and ran toward his truck, but a bright flash of light stopped him in his tracks. Something large and metal screamed through the storm clouds above. The object was on fire and spinning out of control. Jake watched in shock as it crashed into the forest just beyond his clinic with a sound like breaking mountains. The ground shook under his feet and car alarms started going off all over town. Jake stood there for a moment, rain soaking through his clothes. His first thought was to call the authorities, but something made him grab his medical bag from the clinic instead. If someone was hurt in that crash, they would need help fast. The colony's main hospital was 30 miles away, and in this storm, it would take an ambulance over an hour to get here. He jumped into his truck and drove toward the crash site. The headlights cut through the rain as he bounced over the rough ground. Trees had been knocked down in a wide path where the object hit. Smoke rose from a deep crater ahead. When Jake reached the edge of the crater, he could barely believe what he saw. The crashed object was not a human ship. It was made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to bend light around it. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its twisted hull, but what really made Jake's heart race was the creature lying next to the wreckage. It was huge, maybe 8 feet tall, with a body like a person but covered in scales that shifted color in the firelight. The creature had a long tail and clawed hands, but its face was almost human-like, with large golden eyes that stared up at the stormy sky. Dark blood pooled around several deep wounds in its side. Jake's first instinct was to run. This was clearly an alien, and everyone knew aliens were dangerous. The government had told them so many times, but as he watched, the creature tried to lift its head and failed. It was dying. Jake had become a veterinarian because he could not stand to see any living thing suffer. It did not matter if this was a dog, a horse, or something from another world. He climbed down into the crater, the alien's golden eyes fixed on him as he approached. Jake could see intelligence there and pain and something that looked almost like hope. He knelt beside the creature and opened his medical bag. The wounds were bad. Something had shot the alien with energy weapons, leaving burned holes through its scales and into the muscle beneath. Jake had never treated anything like this before, but the basic anatomy was similar to large reptiles he had worked on. He started by stopping the bleeding. The alien watched him work but did not try to fight or escape. When Jake had to push deep into one wound to remove a piece of metal, the creature made a low sound that was clearly pain, but it held perfectly still. Jake talked to it the way he talked to all his patients. "Easy there," he said in a calm voice. "I know it hurts, but I need to get this out. You're going to be okay." The alien tilted its head when he spoke, as if it was trying to understand his words. Jake worked for over an hour in the rain, using his truck's headlights to see. He cleaned the wounds, removed all the metal pieces he could find, and used everything in his medical kit to patch the alien up. When he was done, the creature was stable but still very weak. "I need to get you somewhere dry," Jake said. He looked at his truck, then at the 8-foot alien. There was no way it would fit. The alien seemed to understand his problem. It pointed one clawed finger at itself, then made a walking motion with 2 fingers. It was telling him it could walk. Jake helped the creature stand. It was heavier than any patient he had ever handled, but it did most of the work itself. Together, they made their way slowly back to his clinic. The alien had to duck to get through the door, but Jake's examination room was just big enough. He made a bed of blankets on the floor and helped the alien lie down. Then he set up an IV line to give it fluids and pain medicine. The alien watched everything he did with those intelligent golden eyes. "What are you?" Jake asked quietly. "And how did you end up here?" The alien opened its mouth and made a series of sounds that were almost like words, but not quite. Jake could tell it was trying to communicate, but neither of them knew the other's language. Over the next few hours, Jake stayed with his strange patient. He checked its vital signs, changed its bandages, and gave it more medicine when the pain seemed bad. The alien never tried to hurt him, even when he had to cause pain to help it heal. Lisa Grant, Jake's assistant, arrived early the next morning to open the clinic. She screamed when she saw the alien, but Jake quickly explained what had happened. "Jake, are you crazy?" Lisa said. "That thing could kill us both. We need to call the authorities right now." "Look at it, Lisa," Jake said. "Does it look dangerous to you?" The alien was awake, watching them both with curious eyes. When Lisa approached slowly, it made a soft sound that almost seemed friendly. It's hurt and scared just like any other patient. Jake continued. I took an oath to help animals in need. I did not ask what planet they came from. Lisa still looked worried, but she had worked with Jake long enough to know his stubborn streak. What if more of them come looking for it? Then we deal with that when it happens, Jake said. Right now this one needs our help. The alien seemed to sense they were talking about it. It pointed to itself and made a sound that might have been its name. Then it pointed to Jake and made a different sound like it was trying to learn his name. Jake, he said, pointing to himself. The alien repeated the sound almost perfectly, then it pointed to Lisa. Waiting. Lisa, she said, despite her fear. The alien nodded and repeated her name too. For the next 2 days, Jake cared for his unusual patient. The alien healed faster than he expected, and each day it seemed more interested in learning about humans. It watched everything Jake did and tried to copy human gestures and expressions. Jake began to think this creature was not the monster the government had warned them about. It was intelligent, peaceful, and grateful for his help, but he had no idea that he had just saved the life of the most powerful being in the galaxy, or that his simple act of kindness was about to change the fate of humanity forever. On the 3rd day, Jake noticed his patient was strong enough to stand and walk around the examination room. The alien had been pointing at things and making sounds, clearly trying to learn human words. Jake had been teaching it simple things like water, food, and medicine, but that morning something changed. The alien went to the window and stared up at the sky for a long time. Then it turned to Jake and made urgent sounds pointing outside. It seemed worried about something. Jake followed the alien outside behind his clinic. The creature knelt on the ground and began drawing in the dirt with one sharp claw. Jake watched in amazement as complex patterns took shape. These were not simple pictures. They were detailed star charts, mathematical equations, and symbols that hurt his head to look at. The alien pointed to one particular cluster of stars in its drawing, then pointed to itself. It was showing Jake where it came from. The distance between those stars and Earth was so vast that Jake could barely understand it. This creature had traveled farther than humans had ever dreamed possible. Then the alien drew more symbols. These looked like ships and numbers, and what might have been a map of this part of space. It pointed to Earth's location, then to its home stars, then drew lines between them. Jake got the feeling it was trying to tell him something important about the relationship between their worlds. You're trying to warn me about something, aren't you? Jake said. The alien nodded, which surprised Jake. It had learned that human gesture in just 3 days. Before Jake could ask more questions, he heard vehicles approaching. Military trucks were coming down the road toward his clinic, moving fast. The alien heard them too and immediately moved to stand between Jake and the approaching sound. Captain Steve Rodriguez of the Colonial Defense Forces jumped out of the lead truck with a squad of armed soldiers. Jake had met Rodriguez before at town meetings. He was a good man but very serious about protecting the colony. Dr. Morrison, step away from that creature immediately, Rodriguez ordered, raising his rifle. We've been tracking the alien ship for 3 days. Command wants it captured for questioning. It's not an it, Captain, Jake said, not moving from beside the alien. This is a person and she's my patient. She's hurt and recovering. That thing could be a spy or an advanced scout for an invasion, Rodriguez said. I have orders to bring it in. The alien, who Jake had started thinking of as female based on her behavior, seemed to understand the situation perfectly. She stepped in front of Jake, spreading her arms wide to protect him. She spoke in her own language, and even though Jake could not understand the words, her tone was clear. She was telling the soldiers to stay back. See? Jake said. She's protecting me, not threatening anyone. Does that sound like an enemy to you? Rodriguez looked uncertain for a moment, but his orders were clear. I'm sorry, Doc, but I have to follow commands. Men, prepare to... The captain's words were cut off by a sound like thunder, but the sky was clear. Everyone looked up to see 3 massive shapes materializing in the atmosphere above them. The ships were enormous, each one bigger than the entire colony. They were sleek and dark, with the same strange metal as the crashed ship. A voice spoke from every radio, television, and communication device in the colony at the same time. It spoke perfect English with no accent, but there was something cold and powerful about it. Humans of New Dakota Colony, you are harboring someone who belongs to us. Return Queen Zarathus immediately or your world will face the consequences. Jake stared at the alien beside him. Queen? The creature he had been calling she in his mind was actually royalty? Captain Rodriguez lowered his weapon, his face pale. Queen, Doc, what exactly did you save? The alien, who Jake now knew was named Zarathus, spoke for the first time in English. Her voice was deep and had a strange accent, but the words were clear. I am Zarathus, Queen of the Saurian Dominion. This human saved my life when he could have left me to die. He asked for nothing in return. Rodriguez's radio crackled to life. Captain, this is command. Satellite scans show those ships carry enough firepower to turn the entire colony into glass. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. Jake looked up at the massive ships, then at Zarathus. You're really a queen of what? The Saurian Dominion controls this entire arm of the galaxy, Zarathus said. We are what your people call the Reptilian Empire. My fleet's number in the thousands. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward carefully. Your Majesty, we meant no disrespect. If you want to leave, we won't stop you. But Zarathus shook her head. I cannot leave yet. This human, Jake Morrison, has shown me something I have never experienced in 300 years of life. He helped me without knowing who I was, without asking for reward, without fear. In my culture, such a debt can only be repaid properly. Jake felt confused. I don't understand. You don't owe me anything. I just did what any decent person would do. That is exactly why you do not understand, Zarathus said, looking at him with those golden eyes. No being in the galaxy would have done what you did. Saurians help only their own kind. The Crystalline Confederation helps only for trade agreements. The Machine Collective helps only when programmed to do so. But you helped a complete stranger who could have been dangerous simply because I was hurt. The radio crackled again. This time it was a different voice speaking from the ships above. My queen, the Galactic Council has detected our presence in the Forbidden Zone. They demand an explanation for your presence in human space. Jake looked around at all the confused faces. Forbidden Zone? What Forbidden Zone? Zarathus looked embarrassed for the first time since he had met her. Your species has been quarantined by the Galactic Council. They believe humans are too dangerous to be allowed into galactic society. Dangerous? Us? Rodriguez laughed bitterly. Lady, we can barely get ships to the next star system. Not dangerous in war, Zarathus explained. Dangerous because you are unpredictable. Because you make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. Because you help strangers without calculating benefit. The Council believes this makes you unstable. Jake felt angry. So you're all so logical and smart, but none of you would have helped an injured person? I am considered unusually compassionate for a Saurian, Zarathus said. And even I would have calculated the risks first. You did not hesitate even for a moment. The lead ship began descending toward the colony. It was smaller than the others, but still huge. As it landed in the field next to Jake's clinic, the ground shook under its weight. My queen, the radio voice said, the Council fleet approaches. We must leave now if we are to avoid a diplomatic incident. Zarathus looked at Jake for a long moment. I came to this sector fleeing assassins from my own court. They believed I was becoming too weak, too willing to consider peace with other species. But you have shown me that strength and compassion are not opposites. I still don't understand what this has to do with me, Jake said. You saved the life of the most powerful military leader in this part of the galaxy, Zarathus replied. Whether you intended to or not, you have just made humanity the most important species the Council has ever had to deal with. A ramp extended from the landed ship, and several tall Saurians in elaborate armor walked down. They moved directly to Zarathus and knelt before her. My queen, are you well? Their leader asked in English. I am alive because of this human, she said, placing a clawed hand gently on Jake's shoulder. Commander Thexus, meet Dr. Jake Morrison. He is now under the personal protection of the Saurian crown. Jake looked up at the ships overhead, then at the alien queen beside him, then at Captain Rodriguez's shocked face. His simple life as a small-town veterinarian was clearly over. What happens now? He asked. Zarathus smiled, showing sharp but not threatening teeth. Now, Dr. Morrison, you are going to help me prove to the galaxy that humans deserve a place among the stars, whether the Council likes it or not. Jake stood on the bridge of the Crimson Talon, Queen Zarathus's flagship, and tried not to look down through the transparent floor at the stars rushing past below. They were traveling faster than light, something humans had only dreamed about, heading toward the center of the galaxy, where the Galactic Council met. It had been a week since he left New Dakota. Lisa had volunteered to come with him, along with Captain Rodriguez and 3 other colonists. They were now humanity's first ambassadors to the galaxy, whether Earth's government liked it or not. The Council ships are demanding we stop and submit to inspection, Commander Thexus reported to Queen Zarathus. They claim we are violating the Human Containment Treaty by bringing humans outside their permitted zone. Jake looked at the massive alien warships surrounding them on the view screen. Each one was different, representing species he had never imagined. Some looked like living coral reefs grown into ship shapes. Others were perfect geometric crystals that hurt to look at directly. A few seemed to be made entirely of flowing liquid metal. Tell them, Zarathus said calmly, that I am exercising my right as a council member to bring witnesses to testify about crimes committed against the Dominion. Crimes? Jake asked. What crimes? The assassination attempt on my life was carried out with weapons that could only have come from the Shadow Collective, she explained. And the Shadow Collective has been secretly trading with several council species, despite being officially banned from all civilized space. Lisa looked confused. Who is the Shadow Collective? Commander Thexus turned to answer her. Parasitic entities that consume entire worlds. They take over living beings and use them as hosts. The Council declared war on them 50 years ago, but the war has not gone well. The Council believes the Collective is too dangerous for humans to face, Zarathus added. They want to keep your species safely contained until the threat is eliminated. But I believe humans may be the key to winning this war. The ship shuddered as tractor beams from the Council vessels locked onto them. Jake watched through the view screen as they were pulled into the docking bay of a ship that looked like a floating city. Stay close to me, Zarathus told the humans. Some council species do not react well to unexpected situations. Your presence here will cause quite a stir. The airlock opened and Jake got his first look at the Galactic Council station. The corridors were huge, designed to accommodate species much larger than humans. The walls seemed to be alive, shifting colors and patterns as they walked. Strange music played from hidden speakers, with notes that made Jake's teeth ache. Their escort consisted of beings Jake had only seen in science fiction movies. A creature made of living crystal walked beside a floating jellyfish-like entity that spoke through flashing lights. Behind them came something that looked like a walking tree, and a robot so advanced it seemed more alive than mechanical. The emergency session is already in progress, the crystal being said in a voice like breaking glass. Your unauthorized presence has caused significant disruption to council procedures. They entered a vast chamber filled with hundreds of different aliens. The noise was incredible as dozens of species all talked at once in languages that ranged from musical tones to electronic buzzing. When the humans appeared, however, the chamber fell completely silent. Jake had never felt so small and out of place in his life. These beings commanded technologies beyond human understanding. Some of them were older than human civilization, and here he was, a simple veterinarian standing before the rulers of the galaxy. Council members, Zarathus announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I present the humans who saved my life and uncovered evidence of treason within our own ranks. A being that looked like a floating brain in a mechanical shell spoke first. Queen Zarathus, you have violated the most sacred law of this council by bringing humans beyond the containment zone. The human quarantine exists to protect both them and us. Protect us from what? Jake asked, surprised by his own boldness. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds. Several aliens actually backed away from him. The human speaks without permission, said a creature that resembled a giant spider made of metal. This proves their dangerous unpredictability. I gave him permission, Zarathus said firmly. Dr. Morrison, please tell the council exactly what happened when you found me. Jake looked around at hundreds of alien faces staring at him. His mouth felt dry, but he forced himself to speak. I saw someone who was hurt and I helped them. That's all. I didn't know who she was or where she came from. I just knew she needed medical attention. Without calculating risk to yourself? Asked the floating brain. Without considering potential benefits? Added the crystal creature. Without consulting your superiors? Demanded the metal spider. I'm a doctor, Jake said simply. When someone is hurt, you help them. You don't stop to think about anything else. The chamber erupted in discussion. Jake could see fear in many of the alien faces, but he could not understand why. This is exactly why humans must remain contained, declared a new voice. Jake turned to see a being that looked almost human, except for its completely black eyes and pale gray skin. They make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. They cannot be trusted to act rationally. With respect, Counselor Veth, Zarathus said, rationality is exactly what has kept this council from defeating the Shadow Collective. You calculate, analyze, and debate while worlds die. The collective cannot be defeated through rash action, Veth replied coldly. We must be careful, methodical. An alarm suddenly blared through the station. Emergency lights began flashing, and the chamber's main screen activated to show space outside. Dark ships were emerging from hyperspace, moving toward the station in attack formation. Shadow Collective vessels, Commander Thexus announced urgently. They must have followed us here. Impossible, said the floating brain. Our location is classified at the highest levels. Unless, Zarathus said quietly, someone told them where to find us. Jake watched the screen as the dark ships opened fire on the station's defenses. The Council ships moved to intercept, but their formation was slow and predictable. The collective vessels moved like living things, flowing around the Council's attacks and striking at weak points. Council defenses are failing, Thexus reported. We need to evacuate. No, Jake said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. I think I know how to help. Dr. Morrison, Counselor Veth said impatiently, this is not a situation for human intervention. The collective ships move like animals, right? Jake continued, ignoring the protests. Like a pack hunting prey, but animals have instincts that can be predicted. Zarathus looked interested. What are you thinking? Make them think the station is more damaged than it really is. Wounded prey draws in the whole pack. When they all commit to the attack, hit them with everything you have. That strategy is far too risky, Veth objected. If it fails, the station will be destroyed. If we keep fighting the way we are now, the station will be destroyed anyway, Jake pointed out. Sometimes you have to take a risk to save lives. Zarathus looked at the tactical display, then at Jake, then at the council members. I am willing to try the human strategy. Commander Thexus, coordinate with station defense forces. You cannot seriously be considering this, Veth said angrily. The human saved my life by taking a risk, Zarathus replied. Perhaps it is time the council learned to take risks to save lives as well. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever seen. Following Jake's advice, they made the station appear crippled and defenseless. The collective ships, thinking their prey was helpless, moved in for a final attack. At the last moment, hidden weapon systems activated and Council reinforcements jumped in from hyperspace. The Shadow Collective fleet was destroyed completely. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors and repair crews worked to fix the damage, the Council chamber was much quieter than before. Many of the aliens looked at Jake with something approaching respect. The human strategy was effective, admitted the floating brain. Dangerously effective, added Counselor Veth. This proves humans are too unpredictable for galactic society. No, said a new voice. Jake turned to see a being he had not noticed before. Something like a living galaxy of stars in a roughly humanoid shape. This proves that humans think differently than we do. And perhaps that is exactly what we need. Zarathus stepped forward. I propose that the human quarantine be ended immediately. Humanity has proven they can contribute to galactic security. One battle does not prove anything, Veth argued. Then let us give them more chances to prove themselves, the star being replied. I vote to grant humanity provisional membership in the Galactic Council. Jake looked around the chamber as the debate continued. He thought about his small clinic on New Dakota, and how simple his life had been just a week ago. Now he was standing at the center of galactic politics, representing his entire species. But as he watched Zarathus defend humanity with the same passion she had shown in defending him, Jake realized something important. He might be just a small-town veterinarian, but sometimes the smallest actions could change everything. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than anyone expected. But humanity's first step toward the stars had begun. 3 months after the council battle, Jake found himself in a place he never could have imagined. A field hospital on the planet Kepler Prime, treating wounded soldiers from 6 different alien species. The Shadow Collective had launched their largest attack yet, and the war had spread across 12 star systems. Dr. Morrison, we have incoming wounded from the front lines, called Lieutenant Kate Phillips, a human medic who had volunteered to join the war effort. She was one of 50 humans now serving alongside alien forces throughout the galaxy. Jake looked up from the Saurian soldier he was treating. The warrior's arm had been badly damaged by collective weapons, but Jake had managed to save it using techniques he had learned from studying alien anatomy. The soldier's golden eyes, so similar to Queen Zarathus's, showed gratitude despite the pain. "How many?" Jake asked, washing his hands quickly. 23. Mixed species. Some of them have those parasite infections. Jake felt his stomach drop. The collective's new weapon was worse than their energy guns or explosive devices. They released microscopic parasites that could take control of living beings, turning allies into enemies in a matter of hours. The Galactic Council's best doctors had been working on a cure for months with no success. The first transport arrived, carrying wounded from the battle at Kepler Prime's third moon. Jake immediately saw the telltale signs of parasite infection in several patients. The blank stares, the strange coordination between individuals, the way they moved like parts of a single organism rather than separate beings. "Isolation protocol," Jake ordered. "Anyone showing signs of infection goes to Ward C immediately." As the medical team moved the infected patients, Jake noticed something that made him stop. One of the infected soldiers, a member of the crystalline Veltar species, was fighting the parasite's control. The creature's natural crystal structure was actually slowing the infection's spread. Jake had studied the parasite samples under every type of scanner the Galactic Council possessed. The organisms were incredibly adaptable, changing their structure to match whatever host they invaded, but they seemed to have trouble with certain types of biological complexity. "Kate, get me files on every species that's shown any resistance to the parasites," Jake called out as he worked. "That's a very short list, Doctor," she replied. "Only the Veltar have shown any resistance at all, and even they only last a few hours longer than other species." Jake paused in his work. "What about humans? Has anyone tested human resistance to the parasites?" "No human has been infected yet," Kate said. "The collective seems to be avoiding human targets for some reason." That night, as Jake reviewed medical files in his temporary quarters aboard the hospital ship Healing Light, he made a connection that changed everything. Human immune systems were unique in the galaxy. Because of Earth's incredible biological diversity, humans had evolved to fight off thousands of different parasites, bacteria, and viruses. Their immune systems were chaotic, unpredictable, and extremely aggressive, just like human behavior itself. Jake immediately contacted Queen Zarathus aboard her flagship. She appeared on his communication screen, looking tired after weeks of constant battle. "Jake, what is so urgent that it cannot wait for morning?" she asked, though her tone was more concerned than annoyed. "I think I know why the collective is avoiding human targets," Jake said excitedly. "And I think I know how to cure the parasite infections." Zarathus leaned forward, suddenly alert. "Explain." "Human immune systems are designed to fight multiple different threats at the same time. When we get sick, our bodies throw everything they have at the infection, even if it means damaging healthy tissue. Other species have more efficient immune systems that target specific threats. And you believe this affects the collective parasites how?" "The parasites work by mimicking the host's biological structure," Jake continued. "They can fool most immune systems because they look like they belong. But human immune systems are paranoid. They attack anything that looks even slightly wrong." Zarathus was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "You want to test this theory on human subjects?" "I want to test this theory on myself," Jake corrected. "If I'm right, human blood might contain antibodies that can fight the parasites. If I'm wrong, at least we'll know." "Absolutely not," Zarathus said firmly. "I will not allow you to risk your life on a theory." "People are dying every day," Jake argued. "The infection rate is getting worse. If we don't try something new, the collective will win this war." Before Zarathus could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the hospital ship. Kate's voice came over the communication system. "All medical personnel to emergency stations. Collective forces have broken through the defense line. They're heading directly for us." Jake could see explosions through his quarter's small window. The hospital ship was not armed and depended on escort vessels for protection. But the escort ships were busy fighting the main collective fleet. "Jake, get to an escape pod immediately," Zarathus ordered. "I am sending ships to evacuate the hospital." "There are over 300 patients on this ship," Jake replied. "I'm not leaving them." On the screen he could see Zarathus arguing with her officers. "My queen," he heard Commander Thexus say. The human ships from Earth have just arrived in the system. Admiral Collins is requesting permission to engage. Jake felt a surge of hope. Admiral Patricia Collins commanded humanity's small but advanced fleet. She had been traveling toward the war zone for weeks, bringing Earth's most experienced military commanders and their newest technology. Permission granted, Zarathis said. All ships coordinate with the human fleet. Show them what we have learned about collective tactics. The battle that followed was unlike any previous engagement in the war. The human ships moved with the same unpredictable strategies that had worked at the Council Station. They used desperate, risky maneuvers that no other species would attempt, turning seeming disasters into victories. Admiral Collins herself appeared on the hospital ship's communication system. Dr. Morrison, I understand you have a theory about treating collective infections. Yes, Admiral, but I need infected subjects to test it on. Well, you're about to have plenty, Collins replied grimly. 3 of my ships have crew members showing early signs of infection. We're sending them to you now. An hour later, Jake stood in the hospital ship's laboratory looking at vials of his own blood. He had extracted every type of antibody and immune cell he could isolate. Now came the dangerous part, testing them on infected humans. The first test subject was Lieutenant Ben Carter from the Earthship Defiance. The parasite infection was still in its early stages, but Jake could see the telltale changes beginning in the young officer's eyes. This might hurt, Jake warned as he injected the experimental serum. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then Carter began convulsing violently. His vital signs spiked dangerously high and Jake almost stopped the treatment. But suddenly the convulsions stopped. Carter's eyes cleared and the strange coordination with other infected individuals disappeared. I feel myself again, Carter said weakly. What did you do? I gave your immune system a roadmap, Jake explained, hardly believing it had worked. Human antibodies that taught your body how to recognize and fight the parasites. Within hours, Jake was treating infected crew members from multiple ships. The cure worked on every human patient, and even showed promise for treating infected aliens when modified for their specific biology. But the real breakthrough came when Jake realized something else. Humans who had been infected and cured became completely immune to reinfection. Their immune systems had learned to recognize the parasite so well that they could fight off any future attacks. This changes everything, Admiral Collins said when Jake reported his results. If we can create enough of this serum, we can end the war. There's more, Jake added. Humans who have been infected and cured seem to be able to detect collective presence before anyone else. They can sense when the parasites are nearby. On the bridge of the Crimson Talon, Queen Zarathis watched the battle reports with growing amazement. The human cure was spreading through the Allied fleets, turning infected soldiers back into fighters and creating an army that could no longer be subverted by the collective's main weapon. My queen, Commander Thexus reported, collective forces are retreating from all fronts. They appear to be fleeing. Fleeing to where? Zarathis asked, unknown, but intelligence suggests they are abandoning their forward bases and falling back to their core territories. Jake's voice came over the communication system from the hospital ship. Your Majesty, I think I know why they're retreating. The humans who have been cured can sense collective presence across vast distances. The parasites can no longer hide among us. For the first time since the war began, Zarathis allowed herself to hope. The unpredictable, emotional, illogical humans had done something no other species could manage. They had found a way to defeat the galaxy's greatest threat. But as she watched the human ships pursuing the retreating collective forces with characteristic recklessness, she realized this victory would only make the Council more afraid of humanity's potential. The real test was yet to come. 6 months after the cure for collective parasites changed the course of the war, Jake stood once again before the full Galactic Council. But this time the atmosphere was very different. Fear filled the great chamber as hundreds of alien representatives stared at the small group of humans who had accomplished what their combined civilizations could not. The Shadow Collective had been pushed back to their home regions, their ability to infiltrate and subvert other species completely destroyed. Human-led forces had liberated 12 worlds in the past month alone. But instead of gratitude, many council members showed only worry about humanity's growing influence. The humans have become too powerful, declared Councillor Veth, his pale face showing the same cold expression as always. They now command the loyalty of forces from dozens of species. This was never the intention of their provisional membership. The intention was to win the war, Admiral Collins replied from her position beside Jake, and we're winning it. At what cost? Asked the floating brain entity. Human tactics have resulted in casualty rates 3 times higher than traditional council strategies. But they've also resulted in victory rates 5 times higher, Queen Zarathis pointed out. Dr. Morrison's cure has saved millions of lives across the galaxy. Jake listened to the debate with growing frustration. For months he had worked alongside alien doctors and scientists, sharing everything he learned about treating collective infections. Human medical knowledge had advanced alien medicine in ways that benefited everyone. But instead of cooperation, he saw increasing suspicion. The core issue, said the crystal being who had first welcomed humans to the council, is that humanity's methods are fundamentally incompatible with galactic civilization. They act on emotion rather than logic. They take risks that endanger not just themselves but their allies. Our risks save lives, Kate Phillips said. She now wore the uniform of a galactic medical officer and had become famous throughout the Allied fleets for her battlefield medicine techniques. Your careful, logical approach let the collective spread for 50 years. The chamber erupted in angry sounds from dozens of species. Jake could see that the divide was growing wider, not smaller. The very success that should have brought humans into galactic society was pushing them away from it. Then the chamber's main screen activated, showing an urgent message from the war front. Commander Thexus appeared, his scaled face grim with bad news. Council members, we have a situation. The collective has launched a massive counterattack using a new weapon. They're targeting civilian populations on colony worlds. Estimated casualties are in the billions if we cannot stop them. The screen showed images of collective ships attacking peaceful settlements. These were not military targets but families, children, entire cultures being destroyed. How long until our fleets can respond? Admiral Collins asked. 72 hours minimum, Thexus replied. The collective chose their target specifically to be beyond our rapid response range. 72 hours is too long, Jake said quietly. Those people will all be dead by then. Counselor Veth leaned forward. This is precisely why the collective must be defeated through careful strategy rather than emotional responses. Rash action will only result in more casualties. Jake stared at the images of burning colonies and felt something snap inside him. These beings could discuss strategy while billions died because they were afraid to take risks. They would rather lose slowly and logically than win quickly and emotionally. I have a proposal, Jake announced, standing up to address the full council, something that will end this war permanently and solve the human problem at the same time. The chamber fell silent. Even Queen Zarathis looked surprised. Dr. Morrison, the floating brain said carefully, what exactly are you proposing? Give me complete military command of all forces fighting the collective, Jake said. Not advisory command, not partial command. Complete authority to make decisions without council approval. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Dozens of aliens began shouting in their various languages. Several actually fled the chamber. Absolutely impossible, Veth declared. No single being can be trusted with such power, especially not a human. Why not? Jake asked calmly. You're afraid we're too emotional, too unpredictable, too willing to take risks. Well, this war needs someone willing to take the biggest risk of all. And what risk is that? Queen Zarathis asked, though Jake could see she was beginning to understand. The risk of trusting someone else completely, Jake replied. You've spent centuries building a council where no one species has too much power, where every decision requires debate and compromise. That's good for peacetime, but it's terrible for war. Admiral Collins stepped forward. What exactly are you planning, Doctor? Jake looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces staring at him. I'm planning to end this war in the most human way possible. By doing something so crazy, so emotionally driven, so completely illogical that it will either save the galaxy or destroy everything. Explain, demanded the crystal being. The collective's greatest weakness is that they think like a collective, Jake said. They cannot understand individual action, personal sacrifice, or emotional decisions. They expect logical responses to logical threats. And, Veth prompted impatiently, I'm going to take a single ship, fly directly to the collective's home system, and offer to surrender myself in exchange for ending their attacks on civilian populations. The chamber exploded in chaos. Even Queen Zarathis looked shocked. That is not strategy. the floating brain declared when the noise died down. That is suicide. Maybe, Jake agreed. But it's also something the collective will never expect. They cannot understand why one individual would sacrifice himself for strangers. That confusion might be enough to give our forces the opening they need. Or it might simply result in your death and the continuation of the war. Feth pointed out. Then you'll be rid of the unpredictable humans and can go back to fighting the war your way, Jake replied. But if it works, if my crazy human plan actually succeeds, then you'll have proof that sometimes emotion and instinct are more powerful than logic and planning. Queen Zarathis was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and faced the council. I support Dr. Morrison's proposal, she announced. The chamber fell silent again. Your Majesty, Beth said carefully, surely you cannot be serious. I am completely serious, Zarathis replied. This human saved my life by taking a risk no logical being would take. He cured the galaxy's greatest plague by risking his own life to test unproven theories. He has consistently succeeded by doing things we would never attempt. This is different, the crystal being argued. This affects the entire galaxy. Exactly, Zarathis said. And I believe Dr. Morrison is the only being in this chamber willing to risk everything to save everyone. The vote that followed was the closest in council history. But by a margin of 3 votes, Jake was given temporary supreme command of all forces fighting the Shadow Collective. 2 days later, Jake sat alone in a small courier ship, approaching the dark heart of collective space. Behind him, hidden just outside sensor range, waited the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Every species in the council had contributed ships, following a human plan they did not understand but could not ignore. Dr. Morrison, came Queen Zarathis's voice over the communication system. You still have time to change your mind. No, Jake replied, looking at the massive collective structures ahead. This is the right choice. Sometimes the only way to help someone is to trust them completely, even if they don't deserve it. The collective does not deserve trust, Admiral Collins pointed out. Maybe not, Jake said, but they've never been offered it before, either. As his ship approached the collective's central command node, Jake thought about his small clinic on New Dakota, about the simple choice to help an injured stranger, about how that choice had led him here to the center of the galaxy's fate. The collective's response to his offer would determine not just the outcome of the war, but humanity's place in the galactic community. If his emotional, illogical, completely human plan worked, it would prove that sometimes the best strategy was to throw strategy away entirely. And if it failed, at least he would face that failure, knowing he had tried to save lives rather than count casualties. The communication system crackled to life with an inhuman voice that spoke in perfect harmony from 1,000 throats at once. Human vessel, state your purpose in our domain. Jake took a deep breath and began what would either be humanity's greatest diplomatic triumph or its final act in galactic politics. I'm here to make a deal, he said simply, and to prove that sometimes the most logical thing to do is trust someone who doesn't think like you at all. The response, when it came, would change the galaxy forever. But that, as Jake had learned, was what happened when you chose compassion over calculation, trust over fear, and hope over certainty. It was what happened when you chose to be human.